Is Michael on?
I am here.
Okay, all right. So it looks like everybody's here. So we got Michael, Alexa, Azat. So that's our roll call. I just want to read something quick before we get started with our meeting. The Moorhead Public Housing Agency Board meeting will be held as a video conference today due to COVID-19. The public may not attend in person based on an emergency executive order from the governor. The live stream and post-meeting video recording will be available on the city's YouTube channel at youtube.com/Moorhead. There is a time reserved on our agenda today for citizens to be heard. Any citizens to be heard can address the board by calling 218-299-5463. And I will give that out again before that item comes up on our agenda. So with that, we'll get started with we did the roll call, and the first item is agenda amendments. So are there any agenda amendments, Donna?
I have no amendments.
Okay. So then we will move on to citizens to be heard. And again, if anybody wants to call in at 218-299-5463. And I would ask that you also, if you are calling in, to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and to make sure to respect privacy of other people who live in Moorhead Public Housing by not using people's names or referring to where they live. So again, 218-299-5463. And you're monitoring that line, Don, or Tony is, or?
Yes, both Tony and I are monitoring it, and we have not received a call yet. So if you just want to wait a little bit to make sure no one's trying to call us, we can certainly stand by.
Sure, let's just give it a few more seconds, and then we can adjust if somebody does call after we've moved on.
Okay.
I have a question. How would citizens be hearing this number now at this point?
Michael, we did post that information that Greg read in our usual ways that we post information on our website and on our bulletin boards and our properties. Or if someone happens to be watching the YouTube channel and then heard Greg state the number, they could contact us that way as well.
All right.
I also would like to add to that. So would we be able to do some more advertisement for that number or that link, or because like today, like by having this virus, there's like a big stress on the people who are like hospitals, housing. So those 2-3 sectors are the most affected by this virus. So I also advertise for more, like I also advise for more advertisement for the number. I'm pretty sure people will join us and have questions to ask.
Yeah, we can make sure to attempt that if we continue meeting like this. I know it's probably a little late for today, but we can make sure to try and do something next time to advertise it a little more, encourage people to call in. All right, I think we will move on with the agenda. The next item is the approval of minutes from our February 25th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll move.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, looks like Azat raised his hand. So we have a motion and a second. And if there's no questions, or if there are any questions, now would be the time. And to try and simplify things, I guess how I'll do this is just say if anybody opposes approving this, then speak up. Otherwise, the motion is approved. Second item is request approval for payment of bills.
So on the payment of bills, the board always wants to know if there's anything unusual I will start by saying that we do have 2 months before you for approval. I think that can be handled under one resolution, Greg, if you agree. But I did submit in the board packet the March check request totals as well as the April check request totals because we had to cancel our March board meeting due to the COVID situation. In terms of anything that is unusual or out of the routine, in March, we did issue a check for $41,000 for the elevator repairs at Sharpview. And that is an expense that will be reimbursed and is actually connected to some future board business in this meeting through the publicly owned housing program grant. And so we did opt for an end loan. And so we're basically paying for the repair up front. And then once the loan is processed, we will be reimbursed for that expense. So that's definitely something unusual. And then the other one is just our pilot payment. Pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. We submit a check every year to Clay County for payment in lieu of taxes, which is directed under state statute. And it is the equivalent of 5% of our rent revenue for the year prior. And so we did issue a pilot payment about a week ago. So that's reflected in the April expenses for $28,545. That's also included and factored into our operating budget.
All right, thanks, Don. Any other questions for Don on the budget or the payment of bills, sorry?
I have none.
Okay. So do we have do we have a motion and a second?
This is Michael. I move to approve the payment of bills.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and again, I'll say, if anybody opposes approving this, please signify by saying aye. Hearing none, motion is approved. Next item under business is request board approval for borrowing resolution for the POP loan.
So this is the same loan that we utilized for the Riverview Heights elevator modernization, which we've already approved and closed on that loan. This resolution is specific to the Sharpview. And so if the board approves to this resolution, I will be able to move forward with the loan closing process. This does require unanimous approval. And I also included, just as a informational piece to the board, a certification. So as Alexa's role as secretary, she will also be certifying the bylaws that we have in place for the agency, and I would be submitting that also to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency along with the borrowing resolution for the Sharpview elevator.
All right, any questions for Don? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Alexa. I'll move to approve.
This is Izzet. I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So again, if you oppose this, please signify by saying aye. Hearing none, motion is approved. Next item is request appointment of a budget committee for the 2021 annual budget.
So this is a resolution that the board does once per year as we prepare for our fiscal year, which starts July 1st. And so we'll be preparing our fiscal year end, 20 to 2021 budget. I would like 2 commissioners who would be willing to meet with me a couple of times before the May 26th meeting. And that would enable us to do a deeper dive with the budget to bring a proposal to the board for a vote in May. We prefer to bring a budget for vote in May so that if the board is not ready to approve the budget at the May meeting, we're able to make some adjustments and come back for approval in June. June 30th is our fiscal year end, so we are required to pass our budget, prior to the end of June.
Anyone want to volunteer? We need 2 people. I would just say, depending upon how people feel, that I know it was Michael and I last year, maybe the last 2 years, and that's fine, but also that it might be with 2 newer members, it might be nice to have one of us veterans and one of the newer people if there's an interest.
I can be a newer person if I have a veteran with me.
Okay. And Michael, if it's okay with you, I would do it again as the chair.
That's fine.
Okay. It looks like it's be Alexa and I. We need a resolution or a motion to approve that.
This is Michael. I still move.
Need a second.
Second.
Zab, are you seconding? Okay. We do have a motion and a second, it looks like. So again, anyone opposed, please signify by saying aye. If not, motion carries. Last item for approval is adoption of statutory and regulatory waivers due to COVID-19.
So in your board packet, you'll see a document with some introductory language, kind of providing you with an overview of this, as well as a chart. HUD recently released a public housing notice that was about 63 to 65 pages that basically gave all housing authorities different options to temporarily waive certain regulations due to the state of emergency that we're under with the COVID pandemic. HUD made it clear that we are not required to waive anything. It's entirely at our discretion based on our housing authority and our local need, what regulation we choose to waive and what we don't choose to waive. So I am bringing forward all of the options to the board with my proposed recommendations for which waivers that we should make use of and which we should not make use of. I will say that we will have the ability to make changes down the road if we need to. HUD does give the executive director the authority to make these decisions, and so I did put them in place the day that the notice came out, which was April 10th. But also as a best practice, it is good for us to have clear information on file about which regulations we did choose to waive and when. And because of that, I am bringing all of this forward for board approval.
Anybody have any questions for Don? Anybody have any questions on this, on the waivers for Don? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll move.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
Okay.
Either way.
Okay, looks like we have a motion and a second. Again, anybody who opposes this resolution, signify by saying aye. Hearing none, the motion is approved. And I just want to say too, thanks to Don and all the staff that you've been dealing very well with this COVID-19 and making sure that everybody there is safe, the staff and the residents there and at Sharpview. So thank you for your hard work during this trying time.
Thank you. I'll be sure to pass that along to our staff. They've been very flexible and understanding as we've had to adjust.
Good. So moving on to other business, repositioning, planning process, and timeline.
Okay, so we've been talking about the topic of repositioning um, and this issue for some time. As you know, we did receive a grant from the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund to hire a consultant in order to help us move forward. And so I do want to introduce Cynthia Ewan, who is on the call with us today. Cynthia lives in Bloomington, Minnesota. And she is going to be available to us over the next year as we move through our own analysis and decision-making process. I will say Cynthia has some extensive experience with housing programs and most recently working at St. Paul Public Housing Agency, which I believe is one of the first or early adopters of repositioning options for public housing. And so she has seen it firsthand and been a part of implementing that. My impressions of Cynthia just in our initial introductory calls is that she definitely knows her way around policy and compliance, but she also understands things from a more practical on the ground sense as well. So I think that those two attributes will be helpful to us. So as I said, Cynthia and I have had some introductory meetings to talk about how we work through our process going forward. And we did put a document together that is in your board packet to kind of provide you an overview of how we're looking at structuring our process. So we want the board to be reviewing this and providing us feedback on that today. I know, again, repositioning is not a new topic for you. I looked back and our first discussion about it was actually in October of 2018. And since that time, we've been doing a lot of research and attending a lot of trainings. Greg and I both attended the NARO Fall Conference, which had a track specific to repositioning. We've also begun to communicate with residents as well. In February, we sent out an informational sheet specific to our scattered sites, and we talked about this at numerous resident council meetings. And we've also included repositioning as a key goal in both our 5-year agency plan, which we submitted to HUD, as well as our strategic plan. Given all that, I think where Cynthia can come in and really assist us, and I've shared this with her, is going through all of the information that we've compiled and the discussions we've had, and help us, make sure that we're not missing anything, and really giving everything full consideration and benefiting from her previous experience, and then helping us work through a plan specific to Moorhead Public Housing about how we could operationalize things. So just to turn your attention again to the document, I had it in front of me, but I seem to have misplaced it. Maybe Tony, you can grab me yours. But the document included in your board packet, recaps the purpose of repositioning. So I'm referring to this one right here. So really talking about how it's more expensive and more difficult to operate a public housing program than it is for other affordable housing programs, that the public housing program specifically has more regulation than others, and therefore it's more costly to administer, that we have a huge backlog in capital needs, and we're not getting adequate funding that really keeps up with our aging properties, and that our funding is in many ways unstable and unpredictable, that we live in a cycle of continuing resolution to continuing resolution with Congress. We recently went through a federal government shutdown, and that funding, when we do find out about it, is often on a downward trend from year to year. And so with repositioning, that provides us opportunity to change to a different affordable housing program. And repositioning is really about protecting people's homes and upholding our mission. So being able to continue to provide affordable housing for residents, but doing it on a more sustainable funding platform. There's a number of options under repositioning that we can consider. Greg, you probably got the most familiar with all of this lingo at the NARO training, the Section 18, the Section 22 streamline voluntary conversion, rental assistance demonstration, PBV, PBRA. Looking through everything, it's fairly clear to me that the scattered sites we need to exercise the Section 18 disposition option. And we also, when we look at the scattered sites, we see that with a small number of units, repositioning those units could have a significant impact on our operations and costs. Just to give you an example, we just recently did a unit turn at one of our scattered sites, and it took our 2 maintenance staff 9 hours just to clear out the things that were left behind. And when you add up unit turn costs of painting, flooring, those kinds of things, it's 56% higher in expense than one of our apartment units, which are much smaller. So they're more expensive to operate. We do value them, and we value what they do for families and individuals, and that they house larger families in great neighborhoods in Moorhead. We just want to have the right funding platform for us to be able to operate those programs in a sustainable way. And so in this document, you'll see a phase 1 and phase 2, which is what we're proposing in terms of process to the board, that we begin with phase 1 specific to the scattered sites. And we expect that to be like a 6 to 12 month process. And then moving into a phase 2. We only have Cynthia with us at this point for the next year, but we can continue to look at our options with consultant support as we go further down the road. On the timeline, we would follow those steps for phase 1 and for phase 2. So right now we're in the briefing part of our timeline where we're explaining the need for repositioning. We're providing background information to the board. We're talking with residents, and we're moving into that research phase. And so following this board meeting, Cynthia and I would be digging in even deeper onto the research for phase 1. What are the specific things that we need to be putting together in terms of operationalizing repositioning for the scattered sites, getting board approval, and actually moving through that process. So again, this is a quick 1-pager that we put together for all of you, but we did it in order to kind of recap, why are we doing this? What is repositioning? What are the benefits to us and for our residents? What is the general steps that we would go through in this process? And again, that we're really looking at the scattered sites as a first step, and then looking at our apartment units. And I think there's a lot more questions about what option, if any, we would look to for the apartment units. So starting with the scattered sites seems to be a good place to begin. So given all of that, the other thing I wanted to add, was that we will be going through a simultaneous process with this of making capital needs improvements within our scattered sites under our capital funding grant. So you remember we had the physical needs assessment. We revised our 5-year plan with HUD. We currently do now have access to our 2019 and 2020 capital funding grants. This summer, we're going to be doing a lot of work in our scattered sites to make investments in those properties, things like new roofs and furnaces, et cetera. So that will be happening concurrently with this planning process. With that, I know I talked a lot. Wanting to hear from the board, feedback, questions, and also reminding you that we do have Cynthia available because you've mostly just heard from me about repositioning. So I think it's also helpful for the board to have access to other people with information about this topic.
Thanks for that, Dawn. I will just say that I'm thrilled to have Cynthia on board with her background and expertise after having attended that conference. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of acronyms, and it's important to have people on board who understand how that system works, and I'm looking forward to that. I would just have one question. When you said like phase 1, 6 to 12 months, I think you said, how long of a whole process? We have 4 steps here. How long do you envision that whole process taking?
I think the 6 to 12 months would be the entire set of steps for phase 1. So, okay. Yeah, good question. It's good clarification.
And the other important thing, like you said, we would continue with our mission, and it's important to provide the housing and more if we can. No matter where we go here, the goal is going to be to not have anybody lose their housing, correct? Isn't that one of our overarching?
That is
sure
correct.
We're doing is best, best for the agency and for the people that we serve.
That is correct, and it's a really important point to for the board to assist with communicating to the community and the public, because people's housing is everything to them, and it's a core part of our mission. And so we don't want people to get the idea that they could potentially lose their home. That's not what this is about at all. This is actually about making sure that the homes that we provide for people, that we can continue to do that well into the future, and that those homes can be better maintained as well. So we think residents would actually see a difference in terms of the quality of housing that they have. And Cynthia, I don't know if you want to add anything to that based on your previous experience working with residents.
I've also found that residents are also excited because depending on the kind of repositioning that you do, there tends to be an opportunity for other mobility for them as well. So they're not always locked in. There's some other choices that are available to them. Again, that is dependent on which path is selected for repositioning. But when you're communicating to residents that, we don't always have the money to do your work orders immediately, especially in the scattered sites. Perhaps the house would look so much better with siding, but that is a huge drain, and we can't do that if 5 single-family homes need all of that. So letting them know that this secures funds so that, better maintenance and things like that, most of them have been pretty okay. And the whole thing is just to make sure that you're pretty open with the communication with them, and to not feel like anything is being hidden, and the residents usually respond just.
Thank you. Any board members have questions for Cynthia or Dawn at this time? Any questions? Michael, Alexa, Azette?
Not that I can think of right now. It all sounds good. Good, too good to be true.
Sure.
No questions.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I have no questions at this time. This is all, part of ongoing conversation, and I guess as I sit here and look at this and think about this, I'm kind of thinking about it in the context of additional development and things like that too as we go along, and I don't really have a specific question about that. I'm just kind of thinking big picture, and excited for the opportunity to do this, and really recognizing the need, but also thinking about it in terms of as we try to acquire properties and develop properties, or at least explore those possibilities, how it all fits.
Okay. Anything else, Dawn?
Just a few updates, and I'll be very brief, I promise, maybe. With the COVID situation, I've been keeping Greg more apprised just of more of the details, but for the whole board to know, I am regularly on statewide calls with all of the housing authorities through NARO. And so I am gathering information, and we're exchanging a lot of information about how we're responding. One of the things we've been doing in an effort to better protect residents and staff is collecting mask donations and distributing them. I am happy to say that as of today, we have distributed a mask to every single resident of Riverview Heights High Rise. and we are well on our way to distributing masks to everyone at Sharpview. And while a mask doesn't protect you, a cloth mask, non-medical, doesn't protect you from others, if everyone wears a mask, it does offer some level of protection. And so we're really trying to share and educate residents about things that they can do to be more safe. And we have had a really good response with wearing masks. So we're really excited about that. The other update I would say is we did submit to HUD, as you know, the request to transfer some of the old public housing inventory from Clay County Housing and Redevelopment Authority to Moorhead Public Housing. We're still waiting on hearing back, but I am very optimistic that that is going to be approved. And Dara has been sending me data on dollars that will be available to us as of July 1. So I think this will be a really great opportunity for the agency to line up these resources with our repositioning and strategic planning goals. And I do plan to have maybe some more in-depth discussion with Greg and Alexa, who have been appointed to be on the budget committee, because I think it aligns really well with, you know, how can we make the best use of these funds, given that we do have a lot of different demands and unmet needs. And so maybe we can have a more in-depth discussion about that and have that conversation with the board along with the next operating budget. And then finally, I just wanted to say, given the peacetime state of emergency that we're in, we are trying to keep our board items down to only those most essential. And so I've done that in today's meeting. There were a couple of items I would have liked, you know, to get into, but given the situation we are in with restricted access from the public, we have put a couple of things on hold with the board. One of those is our Q2 strategic planning document, which I was hoping to bring you last month and share also the accomplishments from Q1 with all of you. But just know that that continues to be on our radar, and we'll continue to do everything we can to make progress on our strategic plan. There are some things that have slowed down as a result of COVID. There's different meetings or outreach activities that we had, you know, literally on our schedule that got canceled. And so we'll keep you apprised of that, but hopefully we'll be able to attend to the strategic plan in more detail at a future meeting. Along with that, I've had some preliminary discussion with the board about making some amendments to our retirement plan for employees. I do have some proposed amendments, but again, that is not something that is urgent or pressing at this time. And so it is something we can revisit around when we might implement those things. And I am in conversation and communication with staff about those things as well. So just some things for you to be aware of that are on the horizon for board business.
All right.
Those are my updates.
Don. And thank you for getting masks for people or arranging that. I just have a question about, I'm sure the food disbursement has stopped. Is that, okay.
Yes, that was a very difficult decision because with the state of the economy, food is even more scarce. But when we thought about the limited resources we have from our agency to operate the food distribution and just the logistics of spacing and how that looks, my concern was that it could create COVID spread within our buildings. And so we did decide to cancel food distribution. We do have our service coordinator, Tanya, though, making calls to people, checking in with them, seeing what they need, particularly people that we may be aware of that have limited support systems in place. And she's also been calling larger families at our scattered sites about how is distance learning going? You know, do you have internet connection? Are there resources we can connect you with there? How is it going talking with your teacher about what you need and how to advocate for that? And so that's been a huge help as well.
Good. That's great to keep that connection going. So, anybody have any questions for Don or comments?
Hey, Don, this is Shelley. Has there been any talk about your little garden back there? Like if someone's going to help, or do you need some donations for that?
Thanks for asking, Shelley. The garden has also been a challenging topic for us given the COVID situation. And at this point, our decision has been we're not going to be doing a lot of heavy promotion of the garden. We do have a few residents that would like to garden, as well as one of our next door neighbors, Donna, who lives across the street, that gardens with us. And so we'll be having a very small participation in the garden, but we do see that as a way to then take harvest out of the garden and share it with people at the high rise to help with the food access issue. So that's a long way of saying, yes, we will take plant donations. However, you're not going to be hearing the kinds of maybe community push that I was doing before about the garden this year. It's going to be a much softer year with the garden because we just don't want big numbers of people gathering together.
It's done.
Anything else? All right, hearing nothing, I'll just say again, thanks for all the work Don, you and the staff are doing. Everybody stay safe, take care, and hopefully sometime this year we'll be back in person, hopefully things go well. With that, the meeting is adjourned.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.